Entertain a motion to accept that agenda.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Carried. Minutes from the previous meetings were distributed, and I will entertain a motion to adopt those minutes as distributed.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Members of the public will have a 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items. Members may be present in person or call in to make such comments. To comment by telephone, please call 715-538-1894. Comments may be extended or curtailed at the discretion of the committee/board chair and after advisement by the committee. Next item is dealing with IT and maintenance list of concerns moving forward. You want to go first, Tim?
Sure. Did you all get the email I sent out?
Yep.
With the list of items for transition?
No.
I did not print a copy of that out. So, do I need to print that out? David's got a copy of it.
Donnie, on there?
It's on your email. Yep. He sent it
Oh.
Wednesday at 8. I don't know what time. Wednesday.
Listed right there it is, yep. Okay, got it. It's a nice picture, Tim. And your email, it comes up here.
Oh, is it yellow like a Simpsons character? Or is
No,
it just,
no.
Oh, that's my book jacket photo.
Looks
I would go with.
like a kind of like,
It's two beer, Tim. So on the list of requirements met on Wednesday morning with Kurt and Tad and Eric and was it the full crew?
Yeah.
Close enough. And connecting the B1050 data center to existing courthouse building primary wiring closet was our primary conversation. And it was Thursday when the conduit went in, correct?
Yep.
So the conduit, there is a single pipe going to what appears to go to a space directly under our first floor wiring closet. And then we have two pipes going into Jeremy's maintenance space right into our data center on the other side. So we'll have ample space. Did you get a date yet for when the cabling itself is going to happen?
I got it.
Were you able to verify if LVC is the bid recipient on that? Was it included in the bid?
I didn't check them, but I will.
Yeah, because it was in the original planning map that it was 24 strands would be connected to the old, so it should be part of the existing bid on the new Justice Center. But that team will be researching that and will verify that that's going in. The main thing I was concerned, getting that conduit in is the big first step. So once that's in, and we have that, the next step for us in IT is to configure a core switch in the new space. But we have to wait until the air handling and the redundant power is in place and tested, and of course the cabling itself. Based on estimates from the team here, and Kurtz can probably back me up on this, it's probably late September we should be good to go on that.
Yep.
So we're preparing that. We've reached out to our consultants on the people who helped us acquire the network equipment, and we'll get that pinned down, and we'll get them in place so that we have assistance to get that rolled out. Once we get the one moved over and we set up the initial network switch stack, we can test that base functionality, and then as we bring the closets online, then we can bring those in as to that core. Then when we know we're all good, then we'll be bringing a second core over there and then making that the redundant space for our network. And so then, yeah, that follows in line, the deployment of the network switches to all the IDFs in the Justice Center. And then access points, LVC will be installing those. We still don't know when they plan to.
We talked to them last week, and they know you have them. I said, well, just make sure, let us know, we'll give you a call, you know.
Okay.
Start installing.
Once we've successfully tested the Justice Center network components functions within the new spaces, and then the connectivity to the old building and internet, we can sign off on our network being up and ready in the Justice Center. So we're looking at early October, that should all be done. The next steps involve Jeremy and the facilities, integration and successful testing of the current county badges for access into the Justice Center spaces. And of course, Jeremy is still in charge of setting up the access inside the program, so we'll have to duplicate that in the new system because the two systems will not be connected. But our badges will work in both, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So the new, any badges that are currently deployed. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so the current badges I sent to, was it Brad Brooks or somebody a while ago, and they verified that the badges that we currently use will still function in the other building. But like Tim had stated, I'll have one piece of software that I have to log into to control access in this building, and then one piece of software that I'll have to log into separately to control access in the other building. But I should be able to give access to both buildings on the same badge.
That's good.
And that should be done in early October at the outside as well, right?
Yeah, as soon as that's all said and done with install of that particular.
Integration and successful testing of the PA and the fire alarm systems in the Justice Center with dispatch in their current location, capable of monitoring using both systems. We initiated the conversation with the team here last Wednesday. I haven't heard any. Have you gotten any additional updates, anyone, on that?
Which one is it?
The PA system?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Jeremy this morning, but yeah, I know you want to get the existing PA system to tie in with the one at the main Justice Center, so I'm working on that too.
Okay. And then because dispatch won't be moving into their new space right away, we have to make sure that wherever they happen to be, we can make sure that PA system functions for both buildings from their location. So that's, we're aware of it and we're working on that. Fire alarm systems, that's a requirement to open the building, the same thing. For fire alarms, I will be meeting with TCC later today, and I'm reaching out to Lumen this week about adding 3 analog lines, 1 for the fire panel in the new building and 1 for each elevator. And then if it's Lumen, it'll just be a straight pass-through analog line that a monthly fee is paid to Lumen. TCC does not have analog connectivity in Whitehall. They only have Ethernet, so we would have to buy some sort of converter to put in phones from them. But if it's a big enough savings and I can pay for a one-time cost of a converter, we'll consider that. So I'll find out what TCC can provide today, and we'll get an answer from Lumen this week. I will email the group when we know exactly what's going to happen there. The security emergency phone connection for the Justice Center elevators, reporting back to the current location of dispatch, that is related to that analog line run I'll need to make. And then, yeah, we need to successfully install and test all the closet materials and the redundant power and air handling before we can move in. All those appear to be on path. There will be a handhole going in Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday. And TCC will be running their fiber into the building from that location just to the north of where my new data center is, or right next to dispatch. And then I'm guessing Lumen will probably be wanting to get into that hole at some point as well. those were the primary things that needed to be addressed in order for us to occupy the new space.
How about the cameras?
That's not a requirement to go into the new space. It is a transitional requirement, but backup jail console and full functionality of the camera systems, we determined, I believe, at the last property meeting that those are things we want working but aren't required to move into the space. Not having cameras function everywhere they're supposed to could be an impediment to proper functioning, but I don't think we'll stop the movement of putting people into the new space if not all the cameras are online.
And I think the thing to determine on those elements, because they're some of the ones that need to be done for the move, we're gonna have to take direction from design to have a CB to get some of that work some of the work is already covered in the scope of contractors, right? Others may be additional work that we would have to identify in a CB would come out of the Justice Center contingency. Otherwise, the rest of it that we're looking at design for the renovation is part of the renovation. So the question is, when you move in, what needs to be done? Like Tim just said, is it a requirement for occupancy or not? Or is it something that you can work with until we get the bids for the renovation portion to determine what that scope is? And that's really what, from the perspective of when's it going in, and the cost perspective of where it's at. So, because the original plan with the design was we were going to bid out Justice Center. If it wasn't over budget, we would have went right into design and all those elements would have been in there. We waited on this design because there was no budget there. So we're working out the details there.
Yeah, we were able to, Accurate Controls is the one providing the video camera security solution. And we're working with that vendor we've sent them a list of all our IP cameras at this building and verifying their compatibility with the back-end system over there. Regardless, in order to extend that network into our space, they're going to need to provide a switch. So we went through and our team, Jeremy may have to add some to it, but we came up with a minimum of 33 cameras for the old space because you need it for doors, lobbies, where citizens are interacting, stuff like that. And then we figured 2 per hallway on each floor.
Yeah, because there's a handful here that are still analog that can go over to, but I have a bunch of Ethernet over Ethernet cameras that are in the current jail that can be relocated as well.
So the first step for the vendor is figuring out how big a switch they have to size to put in to extend the network into our space. The video camera security solution is closed loop. It doesn't touch our network. It has to be completely isolated. So there's a switch that didn't get budgeted for in the new Justice Center because there was no budget for this building, but in order to connect the 2 spaces, they need to extend it into our network. So they're gonna have to come up with a cost, and we're recommending a 48 port switch should cover us for that. What I need to know is from Accurate Controls is if the panic button system solution would be on that same closed network. Because if it is, they're gonna need to budget for 2 such switches likely instead. So
How much is that, Tim? How much is the switch?
I don't know. Those are proprietary for that camera system. I don't know what they picked out. I know what I pay for a 48 port switch, and 5 years of support is about $7,500. But I can't speak to what it's actually going to be.
So, and like Tim had said, some of these elements will get prices from the vendor and we'll determine what needs to be done before the move, what after the move, from the budget perspective.
Chair, I got a question on that. So I'm confused a little bit. We're dismantling the old security system cameras in this building for new ones from the new building?
There's not dismantling. We're just going to take the cameras that connect into our existing infrastructure here and connect them to the new back-end system there. Can't have 2 different systems for collecting the data. That would become a front-end and back-end burden that is untenable. And the existing system over here, there's no love there for that particular solution.
But is it a time crunch where we couldn't live with it until we get a new budget for the renovation? No, that's what they're saying, right?
Yeah, this is
that
a
what-
transitional. It's at some point it's going to have to be connected into the back end system because there's doors to monitor and things like that,
But not for occupancy.
but not for occupancy.
Okay.
So you're going to get a quote for a switch, and we have enough fiber between the two buildings that we can spare the 2 strands of fiber that are going to be needed for that switch. And then if they tell us all the cameras that we sent them on the list of IP cameras, oh yeah, that's all compatible with our back-end solution. We don't even have to purchase cameras. We just redeploy them where they're needed, plug them into this new network. They configure them on the back end, and away we go.
So what, basically, summarize, just to make sure I understand it. Some of the cameras here are old, antiquated analog cameras. You're going to upgrade them to digital, and you're going to feed that information back to a DVR that's in the new building to capture all the information for holding purposes. That's how.
In addition to monitoring and yeah, it's not just for archiving, but there's the cameras that
Live
dispatch
feed
monitor, live feed monitoring.
From dispatch?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there's enough IP cameras that if they're acceptable, if they work with this new solution on the Justice Center, we would have enough IP cameras where we wouldn't need to actually replace it. We could outfit all 30, 35 locations that are going to need a camera with the existing cameras. But that's only if they're all compatible. To me, an IP camera is an IP camera, but I don't stake my claim on knowing a lot about AV.
So they have to be powered by the line. If they're not powered by the line, it's.
And all our IP cameras are PoE, so power on Ether, we shouldn't have an issue there. But until I see the actual information or the reply from Brad at Accenture, is that correct? Accurate. I'm thinking of the golf ball people, aren't I? All right, that's up in the air at this point. If there were cameras had to be replaced because they aren't compatible, then we'd have to bring this back to property and revisit, where are the essential points that you're going to have to put these cameras. The cost of connecting an existing camera is minimal, so we'd want to go ahead with that. But if we have to replace cameras, then the decision gets hard. We're going to have to figure out where they go.
Is there a requirement from the state or somebody to have cameras every so many feet or anything?
Not to my way of thinking. I never heard of anything like that, but I know the current security solution and policies of the security team require that doors be monitored, so we'd have to have, every one of our emergency doors would have to have a camera on it, correct?
Yeah, that's what we have now, and that's what I hope.
And then the plan was that every single lobby where there's an interface, but citizens are meeting with staff, like the treasurer / clerk's lobby in the new building, or the human services front desk, or the ADRC front desk, or the health front desk. I think that was 5 locations that they wanted cameras for monitoring the interactions between and whatnot. And then there was, is the Packer room still have to be wired?
Packer room is wired right now for human services, so whether it's left there or it's moved up into what dispatch is now, because I believe that's the human services.
Human Services
Meeting room.
has need of a couple meeting rooms that have cameras in it for when they do observations and stuff like that.
Visits with children from family visits that need to be monitored.
Hopefully there'd be enough space in the new Justice Center for just those kind of meet and greets, since they have those kind of rooms over there. There's a lot of other detail regarding transitional requirements, but I don't know how far into the weeds you want to go on that. We are working on reconfiguration of our courthouse and sheriff's office routers to accommodate the dual connections. Again, we're meeting with TCC on that today. We'll have to move the watch guard access point at some point. Once the sheriff's department moves, that's the special Wi-Fi access point that collects the squad video from the deputies' vehicles. We're going to be moving that into the garage, the patrol entry point where they come in. I don't think there's a whole lot of Oh, we have to put a new master clock in the new Justice Center. I didn't see it in any of the agreements that we were just going to leverage the existing master clock. But the original master clock we have, you can only actually access it to configure it through a Windows 7 machine. And we can't support those anymore. So it's a clown show. A master clock is what feeds the dispatch system so that every component inside the organization has the same time. So when they're going back and reviewing auditing calls, actions by dispatch, radio calls, phone calls, Pro QA instructions, that their key points are all the same time stamp so that we don't have a situation. They're not too spendy, but
Very important when you get to court.
yeah. I'm not real fan of the current Spectracom because it keeps blinking out on my domain controllers. They drop a packet and then they all of a sudden, it's 6 hours ahead on my domain. So
There isn't a newer solution than a Windows 7 machine?
yeah, there is. I would be proposing to buy a replacement master clock that would be modern and work with modern equipment. However, it still is an old technology. You have to put a whip on the roof of your building because it gathers it from satellites. It's Monday morning. I'm gonna let that one go. Yeah, my preference would be just to get it off the internet. The Navy has a wonderful site that feeds you time, but internet connections drop, so dispatch might not like that. That's about all I have regarding my requirements for occupying the building.
Yeah, and you touched on the ones that I had concerns with now already with the fire and the PA, and then according to some of the responses I got too, I mean, it showed that the fire and the PA were running to new dispatch already, but the issue that I had now is that dispatch wasn't moving quite yet. So just figuring out a way to get it back to where dispatch is going to be, which I talked to Kurt about a little bit this morning, and we'll have a better answer on that before the next meeting. But the rest of them are either Venture or IMAG has been here looking at to make sure that the other items that I had issues with are included in the revamp of this particular building, but they're not ones that gave occupancy issues.
Chair, I would suggest that we make sure we have a good collection of potential costs that may not be included in the current bid by the next meeting so that we can, I would request them to be a CB on those if we can.
That's what I was going to suggest, is that I think there's a couple of items here that will need to be done by occupancy to be our goal, to have them in a CB form, have a number to use so that we can get approval to get them done before occupancy. The rest of them that don't need to be done by occupancy will be part of the bid documents. That would be the way we'd move forward, so. That way it's coming to you for action and we got it in place before we need to occupy.
What do you need from us to get a CV prepared?
I think it's right now, I think the two that aren't going to be covered are the PA and the connection of the two fire alarm systems. Those are the two that I think aren't included. I'll confirm with the group here and the contractors. And then when IMEG has some questions on that, I can have them reach out to you and Jeremy if they have questions about how you want that tied or connected. But the CB will then go through Kurt and then out to the contractors. So not a lot outside of, you guys just need these connected. So.
Yeah, I have to reach out to some cabling vendors that are, and then to Lumen itself, because we eliminated IMEG from it.
Okay.
Because modifying the design
You told me that.
documents,
Yeah, okay.
it was just easier to kill all the Cat 3 and then.
I'll have
come in.
Kurt work with you directly on how to get the numbers, so.
Perfect. Thank you. The budget stuff kind of relates to the agenda item that we have, in that I need to know, since I did end up adjusting it after meeting with my team in a way that instead of being slightly under last year's budget, I'm now 2% over last year's budget. One of the things that I'm bringing forward is in the CIP, and it's there's about $20,500, which is about what I'm over on my budget, worth of expenses that I included in my budget that are technically going to be that transitional cost to connect the two buildings and do the stuff in this building. Because I didn't know if there was gonna be a budget for the remodel, and if there was no remodel itself, I still needed to do these things. So I was curious if you wanted me to just wipe this out of the budget and make sure that it's included in any remodel cost for this space. And then that way I can bring my budget in to line.
You wouldn't be able to do that with the laptops, PCs, right? That's kind of normal business.
Yeah, I'm leaving that, the replacement laptops, the router replacements, the remodel office furniture, all of that, and the access points for the existing courthouse, those I have to leave in. But the facility equipment could come out of contingency or out of the remodel cost, because it, technically, the wiring for the antenna boosters, that's a new building cost that I know I have to do. But I don't know that it's included in the new building cost itself.
So that would be one that still needs to be researched like we were just talking about.
Well, I removed about $200,000 worth of stuff from the Justice Center technology and audiovisual stuff going forward. And one of them was cellular connectors, or boosters, because we didn't know what our cellular connectivity was gonna be in the space, and it felt unnecessary, like a cost we could absorb later. And the property committee agreed, so we killed that. Well, in order to hook up the 3 free boosters I'm getting from AT&T, I needed some money to run some cable. Now, either I have that come out of my small items budget, or I include it in my CIP. And so I included in my CIP. Wiring for new closet connections, that was to connect to a possible space on the second floor back to the new building. It may happen if the remodel happens a certain way, it may not, but I didn't know how to budget for it. Conference room components, that's in the new space as well. That's to deploy things like this so that we get consistent room-to-room behavior. I don't have to train people on different systems in different spaces. And again, we removed elements from the new building in order to make it more cost-effective, and then we can solve the problem later. So if we eliminated that from my budget, it just means that I have to be careful in whatever you decide going forward on new building and remodel expenses to make sure we include these elements as they happen. That's all I'm putting it before you, before I take it to exec finance.
Being on exec finance, I'd like to see it go into new build or the remodel.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're gonna maybe be a little hard on you when we shouldn't be, I guess.
Just out of curiosity, money borrowed doesn't go against the levy, at least initially? Okay.
You could leave it in and make no recommendation. You can remove it with a firm statement of rejection. You can do whatever you'd like. Because exec finance is the ultimate arbiter of where the money's gonna come from, so.
Well, I guess I agree with Doc. I'd rather see it attached to the remodel than on the budget.
David, can you help me
Yeah,
out?
no, that makes sense.
Okay. I will go ahead and kill that portion of it then. And then we'll seek funding as needed for the new Justice Center and the remodel of the old. That way, the true cost of the building itself is reflected instead of coming out of my budget. Okay? And then I printed out the rest of my stuff because you didn't have a full copy of the budget from last time, so these were the key pages. Just thought in case you wanted to discuss, I included them. I emailed you a copy of the budget as well.
And I think to be on the safe side, we'll just limit discussion on Tim's budget to what we've already talked about.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy?
That's good, Mike, sorry,
All right.
everything I had was included.
Is there action we need to take to allow you guys to move forward? Okay. Then, next meeting time and date, 8:30 on September 11th.
Not 9 o'clock, I was over having coffee for some reason, thinking 9 o'clock. I see- I see Noddy's truck out front, and I thought, why is he here so early?
Yeah.
We are at 8:30, well, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that works. Thank you very much.
All right. I will adjourn this meeting at 9 o'clock. Thank you, one and all.